About ready to go. Hey guys, what's going on? Mike the Caveman Q here again, Paleo Problem Island, MikeTheCaveman.com. Another edition of Monday Nights with Mike, live stream Q&A. Ask me anything, health related, you know the deal. Put those questions and comments down in the box down below, or to the side, I guess, right now. So it's to your side, depending on where you have it there. Either way, we're going to get this party train rolling. So, as always, it's a live stream. We ask questions, but we do have a couple of topics that we're gonna go and cover specifically. We have bone broth protein. We have what we can do about high prolactin, particularly with respect to fertility and pregnancy, and what we can do both. So we're going to go into both wound repair and scar tissue and why one happens versus the other and what we can do in terms of mitigating those effects and actually promoting proper healing of our tissue. So we're gonna go through the mechanism how we actually do repair everything, and yeah. So what we're gonna do now is we will switch over the views and we'll go to some of the studies. Let's see, bam. All right. So real quick before we get into bone broth protein, we're gonna talk a little bit about. Oh, gonna open the other window there. We're going to talk a little bit about bone broth in general. So there's some concern regarding the risk of contamination. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is the fact that there was a hypothesis about 4 years ago in a paper in the Medical Hypotheses journal. And basically, we're talking about how the preparation and consumption of bone broth is becoming increasingly popular. Things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, depression, schizophrenia, part of the Paleolithic diet. It's kind of cool they did that. And in general, people are starting to realize the beneficial effects that could potentially happen from consuming bone broth. And their concern was that, given the fact there's widespread heavy metals, such as lead, in the environment, that it could actually get passed along to the bones of those animals and could be a problem. So we have that paper here. Unfortunately, it's behind a paywall, so we can look at it real quick over here. Unfortunately, for the purposes of you guys, if you want to take a look at this article beyond right now, I have the link to the abstract. If you have access to behind the paywall, then you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you can reach out to me and maybe we can get something going in terms of being able to see the study otherwise. But real quick, just running through it here. Introduction on this. Again, not really the point of what we're talking about right now, but in terms of whether or not it could potentially be dangerous, we have right here that small blinded control study, this is what they did here, of lead concentration in 3 different types of organic chicken broth show that such broths do indeed contain several times the lead concentration of the water with which the bone broth is made. In particular, broth made from skin and cartilage taken from the bone once the chicken has been cooked with the bones in situ and chicken bone broth were found to have had markedly higher lead concentrations of 9.5 and 7.01 micrograms per liter, respectively. Compared with the control value for tap water treated in the same way, it was 0.89 nanograms per liter, micrograms per liter. In view of the dangers of lead consumption to the human body, we recommend that doctors and nutritionists take the risk of lead contamination into consideration when advising patients about their bone broth diets. Now, again, it's specifically a bone broth diet, so there's consuming a lot of it. Moreover, we're talking about ones that, so they compared the chickens that were made there versus the water itself, and we aren't really told exactly what the quality of these chickens are. So it has the methods here, and we have the water was prepared there. In terms of where the chickens were sourced from, not really that great. It doesn't really say. It's not a very long study. It's a pretty quick one here. So the quality of the chickens is definitely the question to be asked, because we'll go to the next one. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, down below in the description, it is there. So that first study is the Monroe. After that, we're now going to be looking at Su, Lee, and Tsai and Chen, which is 2017. So it was a much newer study. And what they did is they went and looked at the actual risk. So there was concern about whether there'd be risk, but then this study was a follow-up, and it actually does cite that one. Essential and toxic metals in animal bone broths. Excuse me. And in this one, this investigation examines the extraction of metals from animal bones into broth and assesses whether bone broths are a good source of essential metals and risks associated with the consumption of toxic metals. So specifically in this one, they were looking at calcium, magnesium, copper, and aluminum. Okay, so in this one, by reducing the bone broth from 8.38 to 5.32, significantly increased calcium and magnesium extraction by factors of 17.4, 15.3, respectively. Hey, Murray, what's up? So essentially, by increasing the acidity, by adding more apple cider vinegar, adding more lemon, whatever you're using to extract, you're able to extract more calcium and more magnesium by magnitudes of 17 and 15, respectively. Now, a longer cooking time, greater than 8 hours, yielded significantly higher concentrations of calcium and magnesium than shorter cooking times. The extraction characteristics of metals, particularly calcium, magnesium, copper, and aluminum, from the leg and rib bones differed. The between-species variations in extraction were larger than those of within species. So basically, you're going to get more from different animals than you would from the same animals. So, from different parts of the animal. So, looking through, they looked at 4 different factors, and they actually looked at more than just those 4 that I mentioned before. However, those are the 4 they referenced in the abstract. So in the study, though, they looked at calcium, magnesium, iron, zinc, copper, chromium. Is chromium Cr? I believe so. Let's find out. Cr mineral. Is that chromium? I believe it's chromium. Yep, Cr is in fact chromium. All right, going back. So chromium, and then in terms of the deleterious ones, for the toxic metals, they looked at lead, cadmium, and aluminum. So from there, they took the animal bones in the evaluation were the rear leg bones, or the femur, the rib bones of domestic pigs, both white and black, bovine or cow leg bones, all of which were purchased from a local meat market. They had the white and black bones raised in Taiwan, typically fed of forage and food waste, respectively. So the white and black pigs, well, so the white ones apparently, that seems a little messed up. The white ones were fed on forage and the black ones were fed food waste. All right. While the bovine bone was imported from Australia, which was the most common source of local supplies, and Australia, as you know, is almost exclusively grass-fed, because unlike the United States, in which we go and we subsidize the grain supply, so most of the cows that are here in the United States are fed grains. In Australia, they are almost exclusively fed grass. So, the legs were caught longitudinally. That's not really that important. Effective acidity. A pair of leg bones from a single white pig carcass was tested to avoid inter-individual variability. In the experimental group, broth acidified water that was made by mixing 20 milliliters of table vinegar with 1 liter, I guess that's an L, 1 L, I don't know, of deionized water was utilized, that makes sense, was utilized to simmer the broths. After each sampling, like I've never seen liter as a lowercase L, that's why it kind of threw me off. Milliliter and deciliter are alternatively, they'll sometimes be low, sometimes be uppercase, capitalized. I'm speaking like a 4-year-old. Sometimes it'll be capitalized, sometimes it'll be lowercase, and generally liter is not lowercase. It's kind of squirrely to see that. Anyway, after each sampling, the acidic water was also used to make up the water that was lost due to cooking. This treatment yielded pHs levels of 5 to 6 throughout, so not terribly acidic, but definitely more so than regular water. Maybe not rainwater, acid rainwater. In the contrast, in the control group, the non-acidified deionized water was used to prepare the broths, which had a mean pH of 8 to 8.5 throughout the simmering period, so those were more alkaline. The test was run in triplicate, so the effect of the bones were obtained from a single white carcass. Hold on. The rest of it, again, not too important, but yes, there were the white pigs, there were the black pigs, and then there were the cows. They were obtained and tested. And again, if you want to read this one, it's down below in the description. But collections of commercially available bone broth based foods. So they took 3 animal bone broth street foods were obtained from local stores to evaluate the levels of essential and toxic metals in those broths. So they went and did it themselves, as well as looking at pork rib chops that had been stewed in Chinese medicinal herb broth, beef noodle, which was a Chinese-style noodle with stewed beef in bovine bone broth. They had a tonkatsu ramen, Japanese-style noodle in bone broth, pork bone broth, all of which were readily available. For simplicity, only the liquid portion of the foods was assessed. After the samples were cooled, the soups were filtered using a 20 mesh gauge, or gauze. There would be a G if it was gauge. The volume and pH were recorded. Any grease was removed. The remaining contents were acidified by adding 3 milliliters of diluted nitric acid. That's a pretty strong way of doing that. Per liter of broth, and kept at 4 Celsius until analysis. All right. So they went through the heavy metal analysis, and they went again and examined all of those. Based on the results and discussion, here we go. Animal bones contain minerals, and so simmering them is generally believed to produce a broth that contains minerals. Studies have demonstrated that calcium and magnesium levels in broth are generally related to the cooking time, but little is known about the extraction of other elements. Quick sidebar, including toxic metals. Quick sidebar. You were talking about beef and beef and pork. You want to go minimum 8 hours. That's like ridiculously low. Honestly, I'd be going as high as for those two. I'd be going as low as, let's say, 20 hours, 24 hours, upwards of like 72 hours. That's simply not enough time. So to say that, oh, well, we can get definitive analysis on that, particularly on how much is actually getting extracted, is a little bit, I don't know. Not really buying that part of it, at least. Anyway. Moving past that, we have the effects of acidity on the extraction. Figure 1 presents total released extracted amounts of the metals of interest normalized to the bone weight. In the 2 broth tests, acidified or unacidified throughout the experiment, the cadmium levels in all samples were below the current method detection limit, and so were not discussed further. So that's why they threw cadmium out in terms of what its potential damages are. Herein, the addition of the acid to the broth increased the amounts of all metals extracted except for iron and zinc. The increases were greatest and statistically significant for calcium and magnesium. You can read the numbers. I don't feel like going through that. Not really that important. We can look at the graph and it'll be a little bit easier. The highest increase was found at the second hour for calcium, while for magnesium, an increasing trend over time existed. Several studies have found that increasing the acidity, reducing the pH, increased calcium levels in bone broth. However, findings have been inconsistent. For example, the calcium concentration in a soup that is made of cow vertebra and various vegetables, simmered for 24 hours, which we kind of brought before, with a pH of 4.48, was found to be 26 times that in soup without vegetables. Conversely, lowering the pH of a soup that was made from chicken wings, simmered for 2 to 6 hours, from a pH of 7 to 5.7 by adding vinegar, caused a small increase by a factor of 1.4 in calcium concentration. Sorry, got distracted which way it went. In calcium concentration, the control broth, unacidified in the current study, had an overall mean pH of 8.38 throughout the test period, while the test broth with diluted vinegar added in preparation and used to make up the lost water had a mean pH of 5.32. Current test results further verified that cooking time and pH significantly affected the calcium concentrations in the broth. Hence, a very low pH of the broth might be needed to extract more, say 10 to 20 times more calcium magnesium from the bones. Accordingly, the concentrations of calcium magnesium in traditionally made bone broths are expected to be limited to the low tenths of nanogram per milliliter under normal cooking conditions. Similarly, the acidification of the broth significantly increased the amount of copper extracted by a factor of 2 throughout, but the increases for lead, chromium, and aluminum were smaller, and mostly not significant. In contrast, acidification reduced the extraction of iron, particularly over the 2 to 4 hours, while the acidification caused no effect on zinc extraction. So, nobody's really going into bone broth for the iron or the zinc. It's not really particularly high. Calcium, magnesium really are some of the bigger ones you'd be looking for. So let's take a look at the actual graphs themselves here. So we have calcium is first. Let's see A. Leg bone from the white pig is acidified on the left. We have the leg bone unacidified on the right. Okay, and if we look over time at half an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, and 12 hours, we see there is a greater increase in the magnitude of the calcium that's released. If we look over here, the magnesium, same thing. Over time, particularly in the acidified, so by adding a little bit of vinegar, we see a much greater increase in the release. In terms of zinc, not crazy amounts. We have, I mean, it jumped actually, yeah. So actually, the zinc, it started early, and then over time, it kind of decreased. That's interesting. So you actually lost zinc throughout the course of the cooking. In terms of iron, same thing. We lost a little bit, then it increased again after. That's kind of squirrely. So it was a big jump, and then it lost over there. So if you're looking for iron and zinc, you may want to not cook it for that long. So if I had to venture guess, they do compete with each other. So perhaps there was an effect of their competition. Because we look here, we see it drop to about the same level. Then the iron, then the zinc goes up, and then the zinc drops a bunch, and the iron goes up a little bit. I don't know. We're speculating at this point. Well, I'm speculating. Lead concentration is much, much lower because if we're looking at the calcium and the magnesium, those are in the milligrams per kilogram, whereas in the case of the everything else, we're looking at nanograms per kilogram or micrograms per kilogram. So much lower concentrations. But there is some lead, there is some chromium, there is some copper, as well as some aluminum. Now this is all in the pig. Is there a cow one here? No, it's all pig. So either way, the biggest change we see is in terms of that calcium magnesium. Longer it goes, the more, and if you add the acid, you're gonna get more out of it. Whereas conversely, with the zinc and iron, don't want to add the acid apparently. Apparently it will be result, yeah, it was going to result in less of that. So if you're looking for iron and zinc, there you go. But realistically, if you're looking for iron and zinc, go for liver and oysters. Right? Sounds delicious. I mean, I actually enjoy it, so whatever. Anyway, eat the meat itself. We'll come back to that. So, effect of bone type. Long bones to leg bones are composed mainly of dense layers with a high mineral content known as compact bone, supporting body activities and skeletal mobility. While flat bones, such as the rib bones, have more loose, spongy layers known as cancellous bone, which contain bone marrow that forms the red blood cells. Nonetheless, spongy bones are always covered by a layer of compact bone for protection. The hard matrix of compact bone is hydroxyapatite, contains crystals of calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate, and magnesium salts with collagen fibers. And see, that really comes into the crux of the matter. We'll come back to that in a second. But that, more so than the minerals. The minerals are beneficial, but a lot of the benefit from the bone broth in and of itself is coming from the amino acids that are being produced, particularly from the collagen. So that's really where more of the magic's coming from. But more on that in a second. In the sub-study, metal extractions were tested on leg femur, rib bones, single pork carcass. Figure 2 shows the test results through the experiment period. The comparison revealed that the rib bone at first, but that the amounts that more calcium was extracted from the rib bone at first, but the amounts extracted remained constant thereafter until the end of the test. Conversely, the amount of calcium extracted from the leg bone increased over time. Therefore, at the 8th hour and thereafter, the amount extracted exceeded that extracted from the rib bone. Again, that makes sense in terms of, as I mentioned before, the composition of those bones. The leg bone is thicker. It's going to take more time to actually get through to break that out. Same thing with the acidity. By making it more acidic, you're speeding up the reaction. You're catalyzing that reaction. It's going to occur quicker. Anyway, these discrepancies can be reasonably explained by the fact that the rib sample comprised 3 bone pieces, which had more contact surfaces for calcium magnesium extraction from the outer compact, which is basically what I just said, of the bone initially. However, leg bones are mainly composed of a mineral matrix and thus extract calcium and magnesium constantly during cooking. I should probably just keep reading rather than throwing these interjections, and it did it for me. Conversely, the amount of copper that was extracted from the rib was significantly higher than those found those from the leg bone throughout. But for aluminum, only amounts extracted at the 2nd, 4th, and 8th hours were significantly higher than from the rib. The higher level of copper that was extracted from the rib than from the leg bone may reflect the fact that copper is important to maintaining the proper function of bone marrow, so it is present in a greater quantity in the rib. So again, all this here, definitely some interesting stuff. You can read through this one. This one is freely available. Here's another chart. So the first one was looking at the rib bones. This is more specifically at their thigh bones. There's the pigs as well. Not pigs as well. This is the pig specifically versus before when it was the bovine, and this is in the white pig, or that was in the rib before. Now we're in the leg of the pig. Over here we have cooking time in the actual numbers. So rather than graphically displayed, we have the effects themselves. Moving past through there, we have heavy metal concentration, or just metal concentration in general, along the 3 commercial available bone broths, and they were compared. So the broth weight, the pH value, lead, cadmium, chromium, copper, iron, zinc, aluminum, magnesium, calcium. So basically here, we're looking at the hazard quotient or contribution ratio. Basically, what are the concerns of certain levels compared to the actual intake? What's the chance of it being a problem? All right. So conclusions. And again, read through it yourself. Because I have a bunch of papers I want to get through today, so I just wanted to touch on a couple different ones. But bone broths and soups are important foods owing to their taste, nutrients, and curative effects. Their nutritional values, particularly calcium levels, have attracted attention, but systemic evaluations of methods of their preparation and the range of calcium concentrations are few, as are the health risks associated with the ingestion of toxic metals such as lead that are commonly accompany bone minerals. Like increasing acidity and simmering time, as demonstrated herein, the dissolution of bone mineral has been found to be positively associated with many other factors, such as temperature, surface area, and agitation. So again, temperature you're cooking it at, the acidity thereof, and what types of bones you're using. Additionally, variation in bone tissue microstructure and mineral distribution across bones also affects the mineral levels for extraction. Therefore, bone minerals that are extracted in broths may be affected by these factors and so be difficult to standardize. The calcium magnesium levels in homemade or commercial broth soup, according to the literature and current study, are no more than low tenths of a milligram per serving. These levels are generally a few percent of the DRIs, and so their contribution to daily magnesium or calcium requirements are considered to be small. The heavy metals, such as lead and cadmium, that are present in the commercial broth and soup, were found herein to have concentrations in the range of a few milligrams per serving. Thus, the hazard quotients are low, and so the risks that are associated with ingestion of heavy metals from bone broth are considered minimal. So, bring their conclusion to a conclusion. The long and the short of it is, from these particular cows, which, by the way, were in Taiwan, China is kind of behind on their version of the Industrial Revolution, so take that for what it is. Although the pigs were from Taiwan, the cows were sourced from Australia, so theoretically the cows should have been a little better. Fair enough. Now, either way, fact of the matter is, when we're talking about bone broth, we're not necessarily looking at that calcium magnesium. Those aren't the magic ingredients, for lack of a better word, at this point. But they are potentially beneficial. So you get a couple of percentage points of your DRI. Nobody's saying that should be your only source of calcium. If they're saying that, they're an idiot. Don't listen to them if they say only bone broth for calcium. But at the same time, the previous study that we're looking at from 2013, which hypothesized that lead and other heavy metals could be problematic, probably not a big deal. Don't go eating chickens or don't start making bone broth from chickens from Chernobyl. That would be a bad idea. Really big a bad name. Chernobyl chicken. I like it. So moving past that, this study was specifically, or this question specifically came about regarding bone broth protein powder, which has become a more popular thing going on. And Murray, who's actually, commenting right now, sent me this earlier. I actually didn't know about this. This came from Mike Adams over at Natural News, who is he's a bit of a controversial character, but he actually does have legitimate background in forensic training in terms of chemical analysis. So take for what he says for what you will, but send me over this article. Basically, that bone broth protein products, found to contain insect repellent, antibiotics, and prescription drugs, according to the Consumer Wellness Center. And more on that in a second. They actually amended this afterwards. But looking here, they did bone broth lab testing on 10 different products, two organic and 8 non-organic, using streamlined reporting format that covers pesticides, heavy metals, pharmacological chemicals, and more. Based on that, they found only 2 products which achieved perfect score 100 that are organic bone broth products. The conventional non-organic products tested, as previously reported, contain trace levels of various chemicals such as insect repellents, pharmaceutical chemicals, and more. What's more fascinating is that these lab tests are confirming the advantage of certified organic products. So, Ancient Nutrition Organic Bone Broth Collagen seem to have some beast benefit. We hear here they're clear of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, antibiotics, antibacterials, pharmaceutical drugs, toxicological drugs, industrial chemicals. From there, the Left Coast Organic Grass-Fed Bone Broth Powder, same thing, made a perfect 100% ratio. Now, to be clear though, what they did actually backtrack on this a little to be clear on that. So they went and removed the other 8 companies that they discussed. They didn't include that anymore and so these other companies they looked at were Jarrow Formulas, Sports Research, Precision Naturals, Lana Life. Yes, they did do third-party testing, yes. Now, the reason, though, that they actually removed the information on that has to do with the fact that, well, the other 4 products were conventional. They were not organic. So, simply put, as an update, and this was on 10/11, so October 11th, that they edited the page to remove the chemistry details they believe to be confusing to consumers. Yeah. So, what they did was to clarify, the tests were conducted on non-organic products derived from animals, and in that category, almost every product on the shelf will likely show trace amounts of antibiotics, insecticides, certain pharmacological drugs, and they are widely used throughout the animal foods supply chain. And many of the chemicals remain intact through processing and packaging. Another important point is that the chemicals originally detected were not ingredients, nor the overwhelming signals that would indicate any sort of acute health risk or illegality. So what they had there, not illegal, not against the FDA. They're conventionally raised. It's going to happen. You're going to get some trace results. And that's why a lot of times I always say, focus on the actual quality ingredients. You want an organic one. You want grass-fed. You want something that actually has that benefit. So going back 1 page, 2 pages, going back, we see here the ones they mentioned. The Ancient Nutrition. Is Dr. Axe? I thought he had Ancient Nutrition. I thought that was his. So theirs actually is good. So if he has Ancient Nutrition, it should be fine. In case you guys are interested, I did drop a link to that down below on Amazon. Now, with that being said, with respect to bone broths, honestly, this is where we're going to get into some of the beneficial aspects of it. Why would you want to use a bone broth powder? And the answer to that is, because you're too lazy to make bone broth. That's really about it. Honestly, gelatin, bone broth are your way to go. I have the Great Lakes gelatin down below there as well. In terms of benefits of a bone broth powder, it's just more of a convenient, for lack of a better word, way of getting in bone broth. The fact that you have to throw it into a crock pot for 24 hours with the acid, which is why I went to the process of the minerals before, the fact that it's not really going to be too deleterious in terms of heavy metals, which, particularly if you're making it yourself and you're sourcing the bones yourself, you're going to get a better product. 2, it's cheap as dirt to make a lot of it. You can use the leftover bones if you're using quality animals for your meat that you're eating, which you are, right? Right? No? Right. Well, from there, you repurpose those the bones from those animals. You add some apple cider vinegar, and you be ready to rock. You can get real crazy afterwards. Add some beneficial spices, turmeric, cayenne, garlic, all that fun stuff, and you're gonna have a really healthy and cheap meal. Throw it into a thermos and bring with you on the road if you have to, if you're always going somewhere. You're home from work one night, throw it in. So you eat your dinner, you throw it in. The next night, you have it ready for you. It's pretty straightforward. But reasons why you might want to have those bone broth, right? So, or just gelatin in general, same kind of benefit. We have arthritis. Now, this here, again, is from a rat model. Well, the reason why I picked this one in particular is because the study is relatively new. It's a 2017 paper, even though it was received for peer review back in the end of 2015. But, it's a relatively new one. It's 2017 is when it finally got released. It was January of this year. And it is freely available. So this one's down in the description down below as well. And actually, what I'm just going to do real quick is I'm going to add a timestamp to that. I'm going to go back on a couple of these and add timestamps. But we're going to be discussing this one now. So this is the first benefit, is in arthritis. Or for those of us who are allergic to whey and eggs and need to make protein. So I will actually discuss that in a second there, Murray, regarding whether or not it's beneficial for those of you who are allergic to whey and eggs. So, moving back, let's go here. Some of the benefits here are with respect to osteoarthritis. Collagen, is an extracellular matrix protein present in the skin, tendon, cartilage, and bone. Collagen peptides are produced by hydrolysis of gelatin. So, taking that and heat denaturing, so you cook that still. Ask what's the difference between collagen and gelatin. It's basically a component thereof. That's why I've described it before. Basically, just like whey is a component of milk, collagen is a component of your gelatin. Gelatin essentially is just the ground up bones. What is bone broth powder? Essentially, gelatin. Just a fancier way of calling it. Gelatin's been around for a while, and Great Lakes has been on the market moderately cheap for a long, long time. Anyway, the current study investigated the effects of collagen peptides on the articular cartilage of osteoarthritis by evaluating the serum levels of biomarkers CTX11 for type 2 collagen degradation and CP11 for type 2 type 2 collagen synthesis. Histopathological changes, such as the Mankin score, based on the toluidine, that one, blue staining of the proteoglycans, and the immunohistochemical staining of matrix metalloproteinase, or MMP13, and type 2 collagen using a rat experimental osteoarthritis model. Yeah, all that fun stuff. They looked at their ACL joint, and the ACL transection was performed on the right knee joint to surgically induce osteoarthritis. Animals were divided into 4 groups. There was a control group, a sham operated group, an ACLT group without collagen peptides, and an ACLT group with oral administration of collagen peptides. So they did this rat study to be nice. They didn't have to cut people's knees then. Probably more ethical. Depends on your thoughts on rats, I guess. So, in addition, the serum CTX levels... I skipped through a little bit. So, CP administration markedly suppressed the Mankin score, although the difference was not significant. In addition, serum CTX2 levels were significantly decreased in collagen peptide group compared with those in the ACLT group. By contrast, serum CP2 levels did not significantly differ in all 4 groups. Moreover, the immunohistochemical staining of type 2 collagen and MMP13, an important type 2 collagen degrading enzyme, indicated the amount of type 2 collagen increased, whereas the MMP positive chondrocytes decreased. These observations suggest that collagen peptides has the potential 2. Exert chondroprotective action on osteoarthritis by inhibiting MMP13 expression. And type 2 collagen degradation. So in English, what that's saying is the collagen peptides, the component thereof of gelatin bone broth, it has the potential to protect your joints, chondroprotective. So it has the ability to protect that in osteoarthritis by inhibiting MMP, which again is a enzyme that helps to break down that, as well as type 2 collagen, one of the strong types of those joints, the degradation degeneration, so the breaking apart. So osteoarthritis is a chronic joint disease characterized by degeneration of articular cartilage, osteophyte formation, and sclerosis of the subchondral bone. These pathological changes cause stiffness of the joints, chronic pain, and severe disability for patients with OA. Currently, the number of treatments that are currently available for conservative treatments to the surgical extremes, just told you, arthroplasty, blah, blah, blah. Basically, going through the actual explanation of osteoarthritis. We'll skip through that for now. Basically, again, you can read through this here, but looking at this in terms of, we have body weight versus days, we have here their food intake, we have here the actual looking at the cells themselves over time. Over here, we have their Mencken score, which I'm not familiar with the Mencken score, and I'm not looking it up. You can dig more into that if you're so inclined. That's on you. So some more here. So in conclusion, basically, they found that here, based on these findings, it's tempting to speculate for proline and what's the HYP? HYP. Dun, dun, dun. Proline. Okay, prolyl hydroxyproline. Okay. So, obviously that's okay. So that's probably a peptide thereof. It turns out the tripeptide of proline and then hydroxyproline. Anyway, probably should have read through that more to get to that point, shouldn't we? All right. Perfect. Actually, this is actually what I was looking for before. Following oral administration of collagen peptides, prolyl hydroxyproline accumulated in human peripheral blood and remains in the blood for a relatively long time. Importantly, the administration of that suppresses the morphological change and cartilage destruction in the knee joints of animal osteoarthritis models. Furthermore, the results from an in vitro study demonstrated that it suppresses the hypertrophic differentiation of chondrocytes, which is observed in the pathogenesis of OA and stimulates glycosaminoglycan synthesis by chondrocytes. So we're actually going to be talking about that a little bit later when we come back to the wound healing process, actually. Basically, the hypertrophic differentiation of chondrocytes, they're basically causing the wrong type of cells. So rather than having, it's a very poor way of wording it, rather than having the original type of tissue coming back, they're basically adding in scar tissue as a gap filler, and because there's insufficient nutrients to repair that. The proline and other amino acids that are found, such as glycine, glutamine, that are found in that bone broth, in that collagen, are able to provide the nutrients that are necessary to complete the wound healing process. Generally speaking, if we have scar tissue building up, it's because either there was continued damage or insufficient nutrient supply for full repair. So that's why it's important. So that proline, the prolyl hydroxyproline also stimulates the production of hyaluronic acid by cultured synovial cells. Notably, hyaluronic acid exhibits anti-inflammatory action. In fact, I have friends of mine who are on the dark side of the team, and they are in the pharma rep business. Yes, I know. And they actually are in the hyaluronic acid business. In fact, pharmaceutical companies are now selling hyaluronic acid injections to fix your joints. I wonder why. So do you want to get that injected, or would you rather, eat some bone broth and get the same benefit? But who wants to do that? Anyway, based on these findings, it is tempting to speculate that prolyl-hydroxyproline, which is derived from orally administered collagen peptides, enhances the production of hyaluronic acid and glycosaminoglycans by synovial cells and chondrocytes, thereby exhibiting anti-inflammatory effect and chondroprotective effects as evidenced by suppression of MP13 expression. It is in our in vivo model. That is in our in vivo model. So right there, it is very tempting to speculate that. It's kind of why I speculated. Kind of what I've seen in people who have arthritis and other conditions thereof, other joint issues in terms of taking collagen. Definite benefit. In conclusion, the results of the present study suggest that collagen peptides have the potential to exert chondroprotective action on osteoarthritis by inhibiting MP13 expression, type 2 collagen degeneration. We said all that before. Yes. And furthermore, investigating the components of collagen peptides, such as the prolyl-hydroxyproline, are required to elucidate the detailed mechanism behind the beneficial effect of collagen peptides on joint health. All right, next paper. And actually, I know I have it down below in this order, but we're going to skip over the next one. And we're going to look at how they promote bovine collagen peptides, promote the proliferation and differentiation of MC3T3 E1 osteoblasts. Now, before we're looking at chondrocytes, which are the joint cells, the cartilage cells, now we're looking at the bone cells, the cells that will help to build bone. Osteoblasts build bone. So collagen peptides are compounds as bone health supplements, also known to play a role, or are known to play a role in the treatment of osteoporosis. However, the molecular mechanisms of this process remain unclear. This study aimed to investigate the effects of bovine collagen peptide compounds on the proliferation and differentiation of MC3T3 E1 cells. I'm just going to start calling those osteoblasts for the rest of the time. There are more than that type, but just for our purposes right now, I don't feel like saying those letters anymore. Numbers, screw that. Anyway, so the last one was in rats. This one is in mice. Don't worry, the final paper I'm going to be going through is, in fact, in humans. It's just, again, I wanted you guys to be able to get the full papers, and these are some of the newer research that was done, that is available for free without a paywall. All right, so bear with me here. So cell proliferation was analyzed by MTT assays. Again, we don't really care about that, but they did flow cytometry as well as real-time PCR. Yeah. Long and the short, cell proliferation was very efficient after treatment with different concentrations of bovine collagen peptide compounds, and the best concentration was 3 milligrams per milliliter. Bovine collagen peptide compounds significantly increased the percentage of osteoblast cells in the G2S phase. RunX2 expression, ALP activity, and OC production. So ALP, real quick side note on that's alkaline phosphatase. You probably have seen that on your blood work if you've ever had, a basic metabolic panel run before. No, I don't want to restart. Thank you very much. Sorry, guys. So if you ever had a basic metabolic panel run, ALP is often considered amongst your liver enzymes along with ALT and AST, but ALP is actually probably a better marker of bone health. Anyway, ALP activity, OC production were significantly increased after treatment with bovine collagen peptides. Quantitative analysis with alizarin and red staining showed significantly increased mineralization of osteoblast cells after treatment with bovine collagen peptides for 14 to 21 days. So, bovine collagen peptide compounds increased osteoblast proliferation and played a positive role in osteoblast differentiation and mineralized bone matrix formation. Taking all these experiments together, our study indicates that the molecular mechanism for the potential treatment of osteoarthritis and osteoporosis. So before we're looking at the osteoarthritis, now we're looking at osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, and the answer comes much so from that collagen. All right. Basically, moving forward here to low bone mass, deterioration of the bone microarchitecture. We can go through this whole thing here, but again, just for time purposes, we're going to skip through this. It's all available here. Go take a look. It's down below. But again, osteoblasts can be the proliferation of those osteoblasts can be improved by those collagen peptides. So collagen peptides or gelatin, a component there of gelatin, beneficial in rats and mice in these particular studies in terms of your joints in osteoarthritis and in terms of your bone health in terms of osteoporosis. So let's move along to humans, and this gets to Murray, your question regarding a quick source of protein. Because normally I would say that I would disagree with that because collagen, if you ever look on it, it doesn't always say that it's a source of protein, or if it does, it actually will generally have a star next to it. In fact, you know what? Let's take a look. All right, we have a nice little bottle, or a nice little jar of beef hide gelatin. And if we look here, it has 12 grams of gelatin, 11 grams of protein. Now, a lot of times though, let's see. As it goes flying away. The gelatin doesn't want to get eaten. Right. Tryptophan. So because it is a non-source of tryptophan, it is often not considered a complete protein. So, yeah. Gelatin is a purified protein derived from selective hydrolysis of collagen from the skin, the connective tissue and or bones of animals. Great Lakes gelatin provides you the highest types of pure, unflavored, edible gelatins. It's available in type A porcine or type B. It's a special grade of gelatin that meets the specific specifications set forth by the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, regulated by U.S. National Formulary. All grades of gelatin are prepared under the most sanitary conditions. They are gluten-free, non-GMO, and no MSG. Yay! But all right, no problem. All right, you have a good night. Oh, by the way, this actually has also been tested. The Great Lakes does test themselves for the viscosity, for the pH, for the moisture, for the amount of sodium, the heavy metals, as well as bacterial concentration. So it actually does do a great job of measuring all of that. Now, thing with that, like I said, it is theoretically an incomplete protein. So therein lies the problem. But what is interesting is that while we were looking at bones and joints normally, an interesting, relatively new paper in the British Journal of Nutrition by Ziblik and Ulser and Baumstark and Goldhofer and Koenig, I can pronounce Koenig, it's like the only one, in Germany, the British Journal from Germany, anyway, whatever. What they did is they looked at the collagen peptide supplementation in combination with resistance training, so weightlifting, improves body composition and increases muscle strength in elderly sarcopenic men, a randomized controlled trial, which is very interesting. Now, before going through this paper, there are two potential mechanisms that would make sense. One, it still does provide a decent amount of the branched-chain amino acids. It's not a complete protein, and provided you're getting your tryptophan from other places, it will actually provide you with some branched chain. So yes, it could potentially help with muscle mass as well. Moreover, the fact that it's helping with the joints could make it such that the muscle can actually be strengthened. So a lot of times people have issues with weight training, particularly as they're getting older. If you have problems with your joints, you may not be able to lift as much because you're in too much pain to go beyond that. A lot of people have serious joint issues, and that is a major rate limiting step in terms of the amount of muscle you can put on. Or conversely, we see that in people who decided they're going to go on the anabolic androgenic steroid route, and in those people, what ends up happening? Well, the muscle growth outpaces their joint growth, and so they end up having major joint issues. So, taking in the gelatin could potentially be a major benefit for that population as well. You're here. What did you miss? We are talking about how bone broth and gelatin. So what's up, Megan? Bone broth and gelatin for your joints. Way to go. So osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, so your bone health, your joints, and now we've made it up to the point of whether it can actually help your muscle. Excuse me. So right now, basically, we're looking at protein supplementation in combination with resistance training may increase muscle mass and muscle strength in elderly subjects. The objective of the study was to assess the influence of post-exercise protein supplementation with collagen peptides versus a placebo on muscle mass and muscle function following resistance training in elderly subjects with sarcopenia. Total of 53 male subjects were examined, and all participants underwent treatment with either collagen peptides or silica as a placebo. They measured their free fat mass, their bone mass before and after using DEXA. They used isokinetic quadriceps strength test on the right leg was determined, and sensory motor control was investigated by a standardized one-leg stabilization test. So basically, they did a the isokinetic quadriceps strength test. So they held their quad in one place, and the other one they did a balance test, basically. Following the training program, all the subjects showed more pronounced in subjects receiving. Oh, I skipped a line. Sorry about that. Following the training program, all the subjects showed significantly higher levels of free fat mass, body mass, free fat mass, bone mass, IQS, isokinetic quadriceps strength, and sensory motor control. So they had more balance, they had more strength in their quad, they had denser bones, and they had more muscle. That's free fat mass. The effect was significantly more pronounced in subjects receiving collagen peptides. So basically what they're saying there, following that all subjects, whether they got the silica or they got the collagen, they still added strength, they added muscle, and they got stronger. Pretty straightforward kind of situation, right? Regardless of whether you're taking in bone broth or collagen, you're probably going to get stronger if you lift, right? It's pretty straightforward. What the more important fact was that there was significantly, excuse me, I was like, and they also lost fat. Sorry, I got lost in all the letters there. They also had significantly lower levels of fat mass. They actually lost fat as well. Okay, but there was a significantly more pronounced effect in subjects who received collagen peptides. Free fat mass increased by plus 4.2, so with a standard deviation of 2.131 kilograms per pg. Pound gained? I don't know. No, it's kilograms. My brain's fried. I will go through the actual research in a second, the data in a second. So, long and the short, our data demonstrate that the compared with placebo, collagen peptide supplementation in combination with resistance training resulted in a further improved body composition by increasing free fat mass, fat-free mass, muscle strength, and loss of fat mass. Okay? And it actually appeared to increase bone densities as well. So, looking here, there's analysis to show that protein supplementation increases free fat mass and strength to a significantly higher level than placebo. And this as an effect of dietary protein was evident in both younger and older subjects. In most of these randomized controlled trials, they were administered either whey, milk, soy, casein, and in some studies, a mixture of different essential amino acids were administered. In the present one, they did an effect on the post-exercise protein supplementation with collagen peptides and muscle mass and muscle function during a 3-month resistance training program. Collagen is an extracellular protein that accounts for 25 to 35% of the total protein content within the human body. The process of hydrolysis yields collagen peptides that are designated as a food stuff. So again, think of collagen as like the whey of gelatin. The peptides are rapidly resorbed in the small intestine, which may be important for post-exercise recovery. Although the existence of the post-exercise metabolic window has been recently challenged. Moreover, collagen peptides are absorbed in intact form to some extent, up to about 10. Oh crap! What the hell is the KDA? Oh man, I haven't thought about that in a long time. It's gonna bug me. Bear with me for a second. Is it more? It's unified atomic mass units. Is it more? Dalton. It's a Dalton. So it's a kilodalton. Ugh. Duh. Don't want to think about that. Duh. No. So collagen is generally regarded as having low biological value, mainly due to the low amount of the branching amino acids and lysine. That's what it is. So it's short in lysine. It's short in. Here we go. Sorry, I skipped the paragraph. I missed the one there. Sorry. And it's generally believed that the protein applied should be high in branched-chain amino acids. We've talked about that before, particularly leucine, which is known to activate several intracellular cellular transduction pathways involved in initiating translation, such as the mTOR signaling pathway. Now, we were talking before about the branched chains, how they do have it, but it is lower content. So it's generally regarded as having a low biological value, mainly due to the low amount of BCAAs and lysine. Nevertheless, the mixture of amino acids has been shown to be superior when compared with whey protein in maintaining nitrogen balance and body weight during a low protein diet. Now, there's a lot to be said about some differences there, but we'll come back to that. In addition, collagen contains relatively high amounts of arginine and glycine, both of which are known to be important substrates for the synthesis of creatine in the human body. I've talked about that a whole bunch as well. So, arginine also is a precursor to NO, which is nitric oxide, so can produce a little more energy, a little more circulation, which gives the feeling of energy, gets nutrients faster to your brain and elsewhere back to the muscles. So it allows you to work out a little harder. So, although hydrolyzed collagen is contained in sports drinks and bars aimed at improving regeneration and post-exercise muscle recovery, to our knowledge, no controlled study has thus far been investigated on the effects of collagen peptide supplementation on fat-free mass. I'm like dyslexic with that right now. Muscle strength and motor control. We investigated the respective effects in combination with resistance training in a randomized placebo-controlled trial featuring 53 elderly men with sarcopenia class 1, class 2. So we have here, they started out with 148 men that were assessed for eligibility. They excluded some for not meeting the criteria, etc., etc. They basically kicked out ones. These subjects had chronic illnesses, liver cancer, other diseases that made them ineligible to participate with the exercise program. They kicked out another one. They brought in 106, and yeah, you can go past there. You can read again. It's down below the link if you're so inclined. But moving forward, here's the exercise program. Consists of 12-week guided training program on a fitness device, pull downs, leg press, bench press, back press, etc. Involving all larger muscle groups. Subjects took part in the resistance training program in the afternoon, 3 times a week, or a period of 60 minutes. Individual adaptations of the training protocol were regularly made as a function of their actual performance. Intensity was based on the number of possible repetitions. In week 1 to 4, it was 15 repetitions. Weeks 5 to 9, it was 10 repetitions. Weeks 10 to 12, it was 8 repetitions with a 4-second per repetition speed. Subjects were excluded from the study if they missed more than 10% of the training session. So we actually did have to work out that whole time. Dietary intake was evaluated before and after the end of the study using 4-day nutritional protocols. Subjects were asked to fill out the protocols using household measurements. So not the strongest in terms of their nutrition analysis, but is what it is. So the muscular strength was measured. So the way they measured strength was using an isokinetic quadricep strength of the right leg before and after the training program, as well as a sensory motor control was determined using a standardized one-leg stabilization test. And in case you want to look into those, there's a link, reference 22. All right. Statistical methods. We can pass through there for now. Results. That's always the fun part. They had a mean kilogram mass at baseline of 88.2 with a standard deviation of 12.1. At the end, they had a mean kilogram mass of 87 compared with, say 87.3 with a standard deviation of 11.9. The placebo group actually apparently was weighed less to start, and they lost not as much. Fat-free mass, that's where things get interesting. It went from, fat-free mass, which again is a fancier way of saying muscle, went from 64% to 70% in the treatment group, is in the collagen group, whereas it went from 66 to 70 in the, 67 to 70 in the placebo group. So while there was a roughly about 5 to 6 percent gain in muscle in the treatment group, in the placebo group, there was only a 3% gain, 3 to 4% gain. So decently more. Bone mass went up significantly. The actual amount gained in terms of their mean. There was about a 4 kilogram gain in fat-free mass in terms of the treatment group, the collagen group, whereas in the placebo group there was only a 3 kilogram gain. In terms of fat loss, there was a 5 kilogram fat loss in the collagen group, and there was about a 3.5-4 kilogram loss in the placebo group. Bone density, it went up by about 0.5 kilogram, so about a pound of bone mass was gained in the collagen group, whereas in the placebo group they gained 0.2 kilograms. So again, collagen, building muscle, building. Now let's rewind. Working out, resistance training will independently cause progressive benefits in terms of muscle gain, bone mass gain, and fat loss. However, by the addition of these collagen, we were able to see a significantly greater increase. So there you go. Just for time purposes, let's blast right through this. Go and check it out for yourself afterwards. That's basically where we're at right now. All right, so moving past that, real quick, we have here biomechanics of scar tissue on your skin. Basically, skin exhibits direct dependent biomechanical behavior. Skin and scar tissue biomechanics typically characterized by using tensile failure, which identifies tissue's resistance to rupture, but offers limited insight into normal daily function. Characterizing physiologically relevant biomechanical of skin. Let's get a little deeper than I want to right here. Short version. I know I saw some graphs and stuff earlier. Hold on. So yeah, those are these nice pretty graphs in terms of the amount of force that can go. So right here, see the amount of force that can be handled before it tears. If we're talking about skin, it can handle a lot more force before damage happens. If we're talking about scar tissue, we have a lot less. So it can only withstand certain amount of force. They did a study here. They examined it using a pig as their go-to model in terms of what kind of damage we're looking at. And looking here, we see the scar tissue had a lot less strength. That's often what we see. So uninjured skin, effect of scarring. Here we go. So skin displayed comparable high load behavior in both directions, exhibiting similar resistance to failure. Basically, the amount of load, so the amount of weight they can handle, the displacement, and the energy, so how much it takes to be able to fail. However, at low loads, skin was more compliant in the axial direction. Again, getting a little deeper than I wanted to get into for this, and because we are running late on time. So scars showed significantly reduced failure properties. High load linear stiffness was relatively unaffected by scarring, as previously observed in human hypertrophic scars, whereas the low load behavior showed more dramatic response. Scars relaxed faster, indicating greater viscous content. Again, this is deeper than I want. Here we go. Take home message. Here we go. Basically, evaluation of skin and scar tissue. I read a bunch of this earlier. You can kind of dig through this more. The long and the short, because again, we went a little longer on the collagen than I wanted to. The long and the short, what we're talking about right here is when we're talking about scar tissue, normally speaking, when you get damage done, when something gets hurt, whether it be a scar and there's a cut on the outside, whether it be a tear to a muscle joint ligament, whether it be damage to your arteries, your joints, arteries, or your other blood vessels, what happens is your body mounts an inflammatory response, an acute inflammatory response. That is a good thing in the short term. From there, provided you have appropriate amounts of nutrients to replace and repair that tissue with what's supposed to be done, then you're going to ideally have a regeneration of the proper type of tissue. However, if there is poor circulation, so the nutrients can't get there, if there's poor oxygenation, so again, the nutrients can't get there, if there is a sustained damage being done to that tissue, and if the actual nutrients that need to be there are not supplied in sufficient amounts, your body starts applying scar tissue as the interim filler. The problem with that is once scar tissue is there, it becomes a lot harder to break that down. There are ways of getting around that. Things like systemic enzymes and cold laser can be potentially beneficial in breaking back up that scar tissue and allowing basically how if someone, breaks their arm and it resets the wrong way, a lot of times they might re-break it to allow it to reset properly. Same concept. Once that scar tissue builds up, you kind of have to almost damage it to basically be able to re-heal it there. So actually, here you go. Controlling the mechanical forces on wound healing can modify scar development and maturation. I knew that was something I wanted to look at. Damn it. So basically the translational relevance, scope. Where did it go? I knew there was something I wanted to look at, but whatever. Short version, give your body the nutrients it needs. Avoid the scarring. If you have scarring, get in some systemic enzymes, maybe some cold laser. There you go. Massage to break it up a little bit actually helps a little bit as well. So if we're talking about damage to muscles and things like that, the gelatin I've been rambling about for the last hour, fire cream, make sure you get that on there. The comfrey root that's in there can help to provide the extracellular matrix, the collagen, whether you want to go with the bone broth protein or the gelatin or actual bone broth itself. I recommend all of them. Those are all good options. Then yes, those potentially help to repair that tissue. We also saw that bone broth can also potentially help to build muscle, particularly in the case of the collagen peptides specifically. So, cool. Now, last things, because I promised some friends that we would look at hyperprolactinemia. So, what the hell does that mean? Well, prolactin is a type of hormone that is released particularly with respect to reproductive hormones, and it's particularly important in pregnant women. So, for pregnant women. Now, hyperprolactinemia. It's a problem from patients from the reproductive period to the menopause, and it affects women in reproductive age, but also is diagnosed in menopause age and leads to disturbances in the functioning of LH-RH neurons. As a consequence, to a decrease in FSH and LH, cause inhibition of oestradiol type of oestradiol, which type of estrogen production. Prolactin is a peptide hormone, phylogenetically one of the oldest stimulating cells of various organs, which is produced and secreted mainly in the lactotrophic acidophilic cells of the anterior lobe of the pituitary. Influence the increase of mass of the mammary glands, so helps them grow, and stimulation and maintenance of lactation after delivery. There are a number of factors apart from pregnancy, delivery, and lactation that can influence the secretion of the hormone in other physiological contexts and pathological circumstances, like a high-protein diet, stress, REM sleep, or neoplastic tumors, inflammatory diseases, chronic systematic disorders, thyroid hormonal changes, and drug intake. The purpose of this review is to summarize the knowledge of regarding the proper diagnosis and possible influence of hyperprolactinemia on fertility and menopause symptoms and current treatment methods. So, I haven't heard in the comment section from the person who asked this question, and if they are floating around, awesome. If not, then I will go and briefly run through this. I will, again, the link to this paper is down below in the description already. It is this is a Polish name. Good luck. Polubska, et al. 2017. So it's a relatively new one. It's a featured paper, and it is specifically a breakdown of all the potential aspects of it. Now, as well as potential treatments and whatnot. Now, generally saying that treatment isn't usually done unless we're looking at something that's based on a tumor, or we're looking at somebody who's really looking to get fertile. And the problem is that, yes, it can potentially lead to issues with fertility. Because it is pituitary related, it relates back to the HPA axis. And I've talked about the HPA axis on a number of occasions, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and your adrenals. There's also the HPT and the HPG, hypothalamus, pituitary, and your gonads, as well as your hypothalamus, pituitary, and your thyroid. So thyroid issues are usually comorbid with issues with respect to hyperprolactinemia. So if your prolactin levels are squirrely, a lot of times it could be due to thyroid issues. A lot of times it can result in those hormonal issues, right? It's particularly important in terms of LH and FSH, which are follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone. So in terms of the production of your, okay, it leads to the decrease of those, which in turn inhibits estrogen production. So we see that problem when we're talking about fertility issues a lot of times because of that. So stress brings in the adrenals, I said before. Poor sleep can lead to stress, which in turn throws off the adrenals, which in turn kicks back information to your thyroid, to your pituitary. Inflammatory diseases, more stress. Chronic systematic diseases, more stress. Drug intake, more stress. The big key if we're dealing with disturbances to our prolactin levels, again, you can read through this more yourself, but deal with your stress. Look into issues potentially with your thyroid. From there, look at insulin levels. Look at your blood sugar regulation levels. Why? One, stress. Two, more importantly, there is a almost definitive link with respect to insulin resistance and your prolactin. If we look here, ding. So, as before, the adrenal androgen secretion and disturbance in pancreatic functions of insulin secretion, and a decrease in sex hormone binding globulin synthesis in the liver. Moving past that, so impaired lipid metabolism or even insulin resistance concerns even slim patients. So even if you are not overweight, if you are not explicitly diabetic at this point, it could potentially have an issue with respect to your insulin resistance. Another problem, though, is that it can actually, the increased prolactin level is that it can actually affect your bone mineralization and your osteoblast proliferation. So it can actually prevent you from properly building bone, which in turn can lead to bone injuries, fractures, and again, particularly in menopausal women, again, be a big issue. So if you're a little bit younger, not really a big deal. If you are of reproductive age, and particularly if you're trying to get pregnant and you worry about that, go back to see the previous hour we ranted about the collagen and the bone broth, because those can help to build that bone, help to build the muscle. From there, deal with the stress, whether we're looking at actual mindfulness exercises, whether it's yoga, whether it's prayer, meditation, just actually being aware of what's going on and trying to regulate your stress. From there, work on your sleep. Get into a sleep schedule. If your sleep's not great, and most people isn't, or most people's sleep is not great, work on that. Get into a dark room earlier. No, sorry. Completely dark out your room. Get to bed. Turn off all this ambient blue light earlier, which clearly I don't do on Mondays, and I'm, being a huge hypocrite when I say that, but I'm also not trying to get pregnant right now or worried about my prolactin. Stress, on the other hand, yeah, more on that later. Anyway, back to the point. From there, if you've taken care of all those steps, you've worked on managing your stress through lifestyle, you manage it through exercise, other things. From there, you may want to look to different herbs, adaptogenic herbs. We talked about those before, but things like ashwagandha, things like rhodiola, ginseng, luthero, so Siberian ginsengs potentially. Mushrooms like cordyceps and reishi could potentially be beneficial. Chaga, those all could potentially have some benefit in terms of helping to re-regulate cannabidiol, talk about that 1,000 times CBD. All of those can help to regulate your adrenals. By regulating your adrenals, you can bring some of the stress down. By bringing some of that down, you should be able to take down some of the negative feedback loop that's going back to your pituitary and is in turn messing up your prolactin levels. Yeah, that was the super fast version of that because, again, didn't appear to show up, and ask more questions that were directed towards that. Yeah, check out the paper. It's down below. If there's any last questions, otherwise, again, we ran a little bit longer than we like. Oh, okay. I guess we got someone to join the party. Is there any way to test for issues with prolactin? That's a good question. Yes. So, in terms of testing for issues, are we talking about? So, are we talking about specifically testing issues with prolactin, or are we talking about testing your prolactin levels? If we clarify that there. So we can prove hyperprolactinemia when at least 2 test results of prolactin concentration are abnormal. So basically, you're testing for it. In terms of testing for the issues themselves, that I'm not sure what the question is. If you could clarify that, sorry. But yeah, looking here. So basically there are tests for your prolactin levels, and that's how the hyperprolactinemia is brought up, is the fact that that's what it refers to. It refers to too much prolactin in the blood. Yeah, so you test for it to make sure that they're in a good range. So basically, there's a number of symptoms that, again, is going beyond the scope of what we are going to be talking about right now that could show up. Generally, if you're looking at fertility issues, if we're looking at thyroid issues, a lot of times it may not be prolactin, but if you have elevated prolactin, it could be a chicken or the egg scenario. The elevated prolactin could be the precipitating event, whereas the thyroid could be the precipitating event. If you, particularly in women who are trying to get pregnant, that's a test they might run. So another one here. So here we go. So the action of metoclopramide, a dopamine receptor antagonist, is used among others in diagnostics of hyperprolactinemia. It is not used for standard tests, but rather in diagnostics of the cause of the hyperprolactinemia. So basically here, in terms of what the normal levels, the good range, hyperprolactinemia is diagnosed when blood prolactin concentration rises above 25 nanograms per milliliter. We can put that was weird. Finger slipped. We can prove hyperprolactinemia when at least 2 test results of blood prolactin concentration are abnormal, or a single incidental measurement exceeds the upper limit of the norm by at least 5 times. The normal prolactin concentration in women of reproductive ages ranges between 3 and 25 nanograms per milliliter. On average, it is 8 nanograms per milliliter. In pregnant women, it rises by approximately 10 times and can even reach 300 nanograms per milliliter. In breastfeeding mothers, it is 50 nanograms per milliliter on average. So, long and short, I would essentially assume that it would be your gyno that would be running these tests, or somebody else who's maybe an endocrinologist, somebody else who's dealing with your female hormones, for lack of a better word right now, or female issues. Basically, that's here. So it can count that in the diagnosis, the presence of macroprolactin. So there is, if you go through this one here, you go through that study, the Polish study down below, it explains it. Different ways of going about that. If here, go to symptoms. That way you can real briefly go through that. Because again, we're now at an hour and 20 minutes in. So the most commonly said observed symptoms include lowered libido, dryness of the vagina, with subsequent dyspareunia, and disturbances in the arousal phase and orgasm. So generally speaking, you're going to be seeing sexual dysfunction, for, again, lack of a much better word, because part of it has to do with hormonal issues, and you'll see that along potentially with issues with respect to again, fertility in general. So other ones we might see are menstrual disturbances, irregular cycles, amenorrhea, oligomenorrhea, hypomenorrhea. So amenorrhea, stopping the flowing, oligomenorrhea, multiple periods per month, hypomenorrhea, not enough flows. hypermenorrhea, too much flow, shortened menstrual cycles. So again, tighter window in terms of how quickly it happens. So a lot from there, PMS, but I don't think PMS would be the main one, but it's be a symptom along with it. And ovulation, so you're not dropping an egg. Lower libido, acne, hirsutism, headaches, vision disturbances, etc. So, yeah, basically that's what we're looking at there. If you want some more information on that, read through this. Yeah, I think we're gonna call it tonight. I've been up all morning. I had clients this morning. I actually took my CNS test yesterday, if you guys didn't know. So, God willing, I'll have my CNS letters. We'll find out soon, next like 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully. We'll see. But yeah, I know you guys, some of my regulars. I truly appreciate you stopping by. Love you guys. Everybody else who watches on the replay, good work for making it this far. Yeah. I'll see you next week. Until otherwise, I plan on getting back to my brain's fried. I plan on actually getting back to the daily videos. Right now, I'm just completely swamped. I was studying for that test and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, guys, I'll see you next week. So, love you guys, and I'll see you then.